the effort that it takes to build a home, to build a business, to build a family. And so when you're watching the attack on that, you go, why are you trying to dismantle something that's taken so long to build? And that's the same with Australia.
I think it was a real wake-up call when Charlie Kirk was shot. These people mean it when they say burn down Parliament. They mean it. The Aussie accent is going extinct.
Foreign interests are pulling strings everywhere right now. Australia has an opportunity to be an arsenal for the Southern Hemisphere. We should be making missiles here. Yeah. We should be getting chips and we should be manufacturing missiles in Australia, and that would give us teeth.
Our people are basically Nazis. Like, they are really hardcore. Yeah. No, seriously, bro, they make the white Gen Zs look chill.
We rely heavily on the fact that we think the Americans are going to come and save us if the shit hits the fan. But the way this government dances around between China and the US, that relationship, in my opinion, has been badly degraded. Everything they tell you that they're doing is a lie. They lie to you constantly. Why is the government trying to destroy us? Because that's essentially what they're doing. Everyone I know in business is looking for a way to get out of Australia. And I know guys that own $1 million businesses, and they all say the same thing to me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 55 of the ARC podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the big march that's coming up this weekend against mass immigration. We've also had the march yesterday with regards to the Palestine protests. And we're also going to be picking apart what's going on with regards to our defence force in Australia, how our government really has left them out in the open. And lastly, a bit on economics, what it's like to run a small business in this country. And today I'm joined by our special guest from Queensland, Scott Challen, also known as Shallow Chal. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joel. Great to be here.
I'm looking forward to this chat because we've sort of seen each other from afar, but we haven't had a chance to really talk to each other on the various things going on. The marches have been fun. But now we've got to get serious about getting some results for people on immigration. And when it comes to the march coming up this weekend, we're all very excited about the turnout. Brisbane seems to be like where all the energy is very much going to be the largest. And so I'm very excited to see that. And I wanted to talk to you a bit about what's going on with defence as well. I've got some funny facts I wanted to share with you with regards to our tanks, because I heard you talking a bit about defence and the helicopters we're getting and the various other tech we've got. But before we get into all of that, Scott, I have to start off by asking this question. What is it that thrust you into politics? Why did you actually get involved with it? Because, you know, you've got a lovely family, you've got a number of businesses, you're doing quite well for yourself. But I often find myself asking the question, why? Why would you put yourself out there?
Well, let's be honest about doing quite well, because coming up to 17 years in business in December, I've seen the business landscape change a lot over that time. And as a younger man, you know, when I was kicking off working for myself, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, optimistic, have seen the degradation of our economy, of our culture, of our ability to thrive in this country. And in my eyes, it's a breach of what I call the social contract. You might have heard me mention that before. And that's a really important part of how our society stays together. And so I've always watched politics. I actually handed out how to votes for Hanson in the late 90s. That's, kind of where I started. And as my ability to play football and things decreased, my interest in what was happening around us increased by default. So it's been an awesome journey, horrifying as well. And of course, who can forget the elephant in the room, COVID. And COVID really engaged me to get more involved. And it was after Morrison lost in 22 that I joined the Liberal Party and had my eyes wide open walking into that experience and saw how that machine operates from the inside at a number of conventions, and then getting voted into a secretary position for my SEC area in the Liberal Party. And then ultimately, after the last election result, being one of the first casualties kicked out of the party in Queensland for what they called supporting Rennick.
Yeah.
And, a lot of us only joined the Liberal Party because of Rennick. So, I was a bit cheeky, I guess, making some content, saying don't vote for Jared Rennick, and they took that as a support for Jared, even though I didn't actually say those words. And then promptly sent me a letter kicking me out of the party, expelling me, terminating.
Right.
No recourse, no ability to come back. And I was also the secretary of our branch. So I was a conservative figure, right-leaning, that was taken out by the party. And that's what they do. Anyone who sticks their head above the parapet in the party, they pretty much take them out.
A lot of people watching that from afar were quite taken aback. They were thinking, how can this man, who has the largest following in the Liberal Party for any sitting member, other than Scott Morrison, how could he actually be taken out in this way? And and that's where I guess that's why you signed up as a member, safeguarding.
Well, what a wonderful experience to be there and see that happen. I mean, terrible for what happened to Jared because we lost a great senator, and that number 3 spot would have always been a hard one to win for the Liberals anyway in Queensland. But I was at 2 conventions and watched what they did to Rennick over that period of time, and that was a real lesson in politics for me. Almost as big as the first time when I handed out how to vote for Hanson in the 90s, and 10% of the Australian population voted for her, and I think she only won 1 seat, So that was when I started to understand what proportional representation meant, and also how the preference system worked.
Yeah,
because Australian politics, it's a messy game, and there's a lot of machinations to it that most people don't fully understand, especially when it comes to preferencing.
Well, that's why I exist. I very quickly during COVID, I know you watched from afar my original show, The Arc, with Ricardo Bossi.
100%.
It was funny that I was talking about these things, the preferential system and whatever. Aussies, they have no idea. I don't know any of this stuff. And maybe it's just because I'm a nerd and I follow UK, US politics and Australian politics as a result. But there is a huge market where Aussies, they don't learn about civic duty in schools. Is that how it used to always be? Did they never learn that, years ago?
I don't specifically remember being taught that at school. And I mean, you went to high school here as well. And I don't recall that. I don't recall that we were taught how preference voting works. So I reckon about 70% of Australians probably step into that booth with no idea either. And gosh knows, I've scrutineered at enough elections and assisted to watch how people vote, and clearly they have no idea.
Well, let's talk about the March for Australia, because you really put your head out there recently. You'd sort of been working in the shadows for a few years, but then March for Australia comes around. You put your hand up. I'm sitting here in the studio. Rami's on the ground in Sydney. And I'm like, who is this dude in Queensland talking about, doing this awesome rally, like a rock concert in Queensland? It was the best one all day. Yeah. And I was like, I got to meet this guy. So why did you put your hand up for that?
Funny story. You and I have actually met before. When Nigel Farage came to Australia, you were hosting it up in Queensland. And I met you that night at the backstage meet and greet. But you wouldn't remember, dude, because it was a few years ago now. That was pre-COVID, I think, when Farage came.
That was...
no, it was after.
That was like 27th of September 2022.
22. So it was after.
Yeah, that was the end of a very long tour.
Yeah,
that was. But it was a great night.
Yeah, and I'm so glad I met Nigel, because he will be the next Prime Minister of the UK, and I can say that pretty comfortably. And we want to see the same thing happen in Australia. It's time to shake this thing up. So why did I put my head above the parapet? Yeah, look, it would have been easy just to sit back and go, okay, I'm in the twilight of years of my business career. Let's be honest about it. I could just sit back and watch it play out, but I'm emotionally invested in this country. I love Australia, and I say that, and it sounds cheesy, and people go, "Oh, it's patriot. It's corny to be patriotic." But the reality is, I look at the Americans. I'm actually jealous of their patriotism. And especially being an ex-defense guy, we all love it. We love this place. It gave us great opportunities, And I was raised by a single mum. Went to 24 schools to finish year 12. This country gave a kid that had that kind of disadvantaged background the opportunity to be something. Now, I've employed hundreds of Australians. I own multiple businesses. We're diversified. We're vertically integrated. We've done all the things we're meant to do. And now it's like, well, why is the government trying to destroy us? Because that's essentially what they're doing. I can't look at anything they're doing without going, okay, why are you trying to kill us? Because that's what it is. And I metaphorically say kill. Your government doesn't like businesses like mine or the size that they are in this country. And so they're doing everything they can to wipe them out. Yeah. So why did I put my head above the parapet? Because something's intrinsically wrong here.
Yeah. Can I ask, when it comes to your travels and your experiences overseas, what's really molded your worldview? So you were born in the 70s?
Yeah, 72 drop. As Rennick once said to me, it was a 71 drop. I was a 72 drop. Right. I had the opportunity to go work in West Africa in the 90s. Right. I went to an agricultural college for year 11 and 12. So I went to 23 schools up to year 10. right? And did the last 2 years at one school, which was a boarding agricultural college, came out with a certificate of agriculture. I worked on farms and stations and mustard and, did all that great stuff as a young man. But I just really wanted to get into building, and I really liked making things. And so got a job as an offsider for a shed company, just helping stand steel, got my rigger's ticket. And then I was on a building site in Perth one day, and the owner of the business turned up and said, I need 2 guys to go to Africa next week. And of course, everyone was married with kids and stuff, and we need you to go for possibly up to 9 months. And I was like, I'll go. That was that. So I went and got jabs that afternoon, and next minute I'm on a flight to the UK and on another flight to Ghana in West Africa, and then, a 5-hour drive inland from there to the middle of nowhere. End up on this building project, standing steel for these giant sheds over there. And this is the late 90s, 97. The reason that this company was in Africa opening a gold mine was because they couldn't get approval in Western Australia to do one. That was in 97. So that was my first taste of, hang on, you're mining in Africa because you can't get a mine approved in WA. So straight away, as a young man, I'm going, hey, something's not right about that. Right. And then I found myself living and working with all these Rhodesians. And so, I've had a lot of criticism online for my Rhodesian flag in the gym, and it's purely because I like to remember those guys a lot. Yeah. And, the idea of a white ethno-state in Rhodesia wasn't really the true story of what that is. That's been manipulated throughout history. Yeah. And so Rhodesia was a wonderful, thriving country. It had its problems, like every place does, but they had the ability there to create something out of nothing, and they really did a fantastic job of it. Punched way above their weight for a really long time, and all of those guys were ex-military, all of them in construction, working around Africa on building sites. And lots of nights sitting around drinking beers, talking with them. And the history lesson that they gave me was, Scotty, you're going to lose your country. These communists are coming for everything. Now, they had first-hand experience of those communists, and they'd shot bullets at them, and they'd seen their mates killed, and they'd seen their friends and family killed, but that lesson just never really left me. And so when I've watched this slow creep of the bureaucracy and the tyrannical overreach, especially during COVID, I went, hang on a second. This is the kind of shit those fellas were talking about back then. And so this is where we are today.
Where to take it? So you've got a construction background. You've done a lot of travel, over 20 schools in 12 years. And he's another construction guy, because we were just with another guy last week in construction. And it's like, what is it with people that work with their hands, farmers, people in construction with different trades? They're just rooted in reality. They just they're passionate about defense because they understand when you have a disagreement, what's going to go down. And they also understand the reality of what makes a business. They understand manipulation, negotiation with contracts. But the other thing is what you're talking about with Rhodesia. Yeah, they were kicking the communists' butts.
They never lost a battle. Yeah, it was 100-to-1 kill ratio. Yeah, I mean, look, it's brutal. We're talking about killing. It's war. That's what happens. Oh, but, they punched above their weight. And hypothetically, if the rest of the world had backed them in, they would have won that. That could have been the defining moment for Africa overall. And then ultimately, what happened out of that? South Africa went next. Well, Mozambique went, then Rhodesia, and then South Africa.
It's a heartbreaking story. I mean, those that maybe remember the story when I got back early last year and I started the ARC. The soapstone is basically me tipping my hat to the Rhodesians and what they were building. The soapstone's from Zimbabwe. I went to Zimbabwe and Rhodesia and South Africa. And it's really, really sad as a story.
Yeah.
What the story of Rhodesia, what it could have been. And when you go there, it's like the fall of Rome when you're walking through it. And you guys might laugh at it, but it was literally where civilization met barbarity. You had, the Zulu tribes in that area of the world. And you had, John Cecil Rhodes establishes a country. It wasn't like South Africa, where it was 4 different colonial powers. He built the A-team to colonize a country.
Yeah.
And he did it right.
Yeah.
He did it the right way. And his dream was to have a train line go all the way from Cape Town in South Africa through Zimbabwe all the way up to Cairo to create a massive economic corridor. If that happened...
An African Belt and Road.
Africa would not look like... Forget about all the charity work we've been doing. It would have paled in comparison to what that would have done in lifting Africa out of poverty. But you can't have that happen because how dare you try and lift people out of poverty? You
Well,
know?
that's because the people who tore it down don't know how to build things. And when you speak about tradespeople, right, I mean, my journey to this position has been because I know how to build things. And so I take it really personal when I see people trying to destroy things, because I know what goes into making things, like the effort that it takes to build a home, to build a business, to build a family. And so when you're watching the attack on that, you go, why are you trying to dismantle something that's taken so long to build? And that's the same with Australia. Australia is that. It's taken a long time to build this wonderful, prosperous country. We've opened our arms, we've welcomed so many people in from all sorts of places, yet here we are, constantly under attack. And then we see a senator yesterday calling to burn down the Parliament House. You know, I mean, in what context, of course? She is, you know, a dingbat in my opinion. But this is the same parliament that I swore an oath to protect and defend when I joined the military as a young man, and plenty of other people have taken very seriously as well. We shouldn't just let throwaway lines like that be normalised, and that's an indication of a very profoundly sick society. After I got back from Africa, I ended up joining the Air Force and doing my 5.5, nearly 6 years there, and that was enough for me, and got back out and then learned how to sell. And then by default, when you know how to sell and you know how to build, you're basically unstoppable. And got some formal qualifications, got my carpentry qualification signed off, and then got my builder's licenses. And bada bing, bada boom, 17 years later, here we are, sitting here with you today. So,
well, that explains a lot, because there was a gap in there, and I'm like, I don't understand why he's doing that. And a lot of people might think it's irrelevant, but it's like when you draw a line on a graph and you're like, well, I understand why you're here, but what happened before that?
Yeah.
I can see the trajectory you were on.
What happened before that was 3 DUIs, a failed marriage, you know, an assault charge or 2. I mean, let's face it, I grew up as a scallywag Australian guy, you know, and had my fingers in all sorts of trouble because that's all I knew how to do. The military gave me the opportunity to learn how to be disciplined, and I was given great opportunities to work in fantastic places and earn good money and, you know, buy a house and all those type of things, and ultimately ended up with a wonderful marriage and 4 beautiful daughters. So, you know, I got there in the end, but it wasn't a straight line. Let's be honest.
No, not at all.
Twisted and turned all over the place, you know.
No. Well, I call it character development. When I'm copying the, you know, getting beaten while I'm down, it's character development. It's so when I see that, I mean, the idea that you were moved from over 20 different schools for your education, whereas a guy like me, one school, kindergarten to high school, it's like, okay, well, that explains why you're so good in no matter what environment. Like, I was looking at you at the stage and I was like, this man's not budging. He's not being bullied by these clowns in the audience that are trying to bully him. He's sticking to the plan, which he set out. And I was like, that's a rare quality. Courage sadly, it's become a rare quality, but it's an Anzac quality. And I think that's what really imbues the Anzac spirit in the past. And I'm just thinking, why? Because it's become a question in my mind.
Yeah.
You know, why is it that these rare qualities that the Anzac had, they worked on farms, they worked with their hands.
Humble.
Very humble.
Didn't talk themselves up too hard.
When they
take themselves too seriously. These are Australian qualities.
Exactly.
And but also, when it was time to throw punches, they threw punches and they punched well above their weight. Look, I've always believed, Joel, that life is defined by difficult conversations. So the ability for me to sit here with you, whether we were mortal enemies or not, and I know this movement has its fractured personalities and people that don't like each other for whatever reason, and there's a whole bunch of history here that I don't understand a lot of stuff on.
Sure.
I know that in business, I've had to sit and have some of the hardest conversations you could ever possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And so if you're able to navigate that, you can pretty much navigate anything.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I kind of what you said something about you're very envious of the patriotism the Yanks have. I totally agree. In fact, and I think you picked up on it when I was over there and I made that video saying, guys, we've got to come together after that whole experience of the Charlie Kirk vigil and everything. It was a truly spiritual event, being in that environment among patriots. They were just so loving, welcoming. It was an affirmation of their beliefs.
Sure.
In Christ, in the values that made America great.
Yep. And
being there and then realizing, you know what? If we want this in Australia, we've really got to stop punching right. And look, easy for me, and as I said, I apologize for anything I'd done. We've got to bury the hatchet. We've got to move forward. if we want to have nice things, we're going to have to stop picking fights with everyone, especially on the right, and really focus. It's a bit like the minor party thing. They focus on splitting 15% of the vote, whereas there's 85% of the vote out there to get. It's like, we'll stop fighting over scraps, grow the pie. And I think that when I was there, I realized if you want this to come to Australia, you need to bottle that and bring it. And the Yanks, I love going there because I always come back recharged as a result, because it is tough here. It is not easy.
America's also a very transactional society. Look, don't get me wrong here. There's elements of America that I would not want Australia to be. I am super envious of their gun laws because I love guns. But I also don't want to live in a society where everyone's extremely, overly armed and gun violence is the norm.
Yeah.
But you're actually living in a society where gun violence is becoming the norm now, except you don't own any guns. So, look, America is America. It is transactional by nature. But as a businessman, I'm totally comfortable with that, but also understand that not everybody likes to hustle, and you've got to have a social safety net, which I'm very proud of that we have in Australia. Of course, it's being abused like hell, and I know it's being abused because I'm having the eyeballs taxed out of me right now to pay for it.
Yeah.
So we know that something's not quite right, and here we are.
Well, let's talk about business because, again, you're very experienced when it comes to that. A lot of character development. I was reading an article this morning about Victoria. So they want to be, I think you replied to this actually, or this tweet. They want to be bailed out by the other states basically because of the massive debt they've accrued. I think it's as large as all the other states combined. 9 out of 10 new jobs that are created are government jobs in Victoria.
In the last 12 months.
In the last 12 months. I mean, what's your reaction when you see this as a business owner, as someone that's actually fiscally literate, versus the state government down there?
Disgusted. There's no other way to look at it. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. These people should not be in jobs. If they were the CEOs of any other company or on the board of directors, they'd be fired by now for racking up this kind of debt. No one in business would accept this. That's the hard reality of it. But these incompetent fools are voted in. There is no real opposition in Victoria. Victoria is a basket case. Now, we'll lead that into March for Australia and what's going to happen down in Victoria and what could potentially happen down there. But what an absolute shit fight they've created. I was born in Melbourne, great affinity for Victoria, love the state just as much as I love my country. But it really is the inbred cousin of Australia right now.
Yeah, I'm really worried about it.
Yeah, same.
Going into the 13th of September rally, I called that week, I called about 100 different people down there and said, what are we going to do about your state? Like electorally, it's becoming untenable. If you had the voice vote and it was at 55%, a very simple proposal in Queensland knocked it out of the park.
70 almost.
70. Well, the way I look at it is not the numbers they put.
Yeah.
When they say 70%, I know that could be 80%.
100%.
But there's 15% of people that didn't participate.
Yeah.
They manipulate statistics.
I saw plenty of donkey votes when I was scrutineering of that one.
Yeah. And so I look at Victoria and I'm like, okay, 55%, maybe that's about 65% if they all turned out. But we're getting close to the point where if we've only hanging on by 5% on a basic proposal, we can't win elections.
The horrific part about Victoria is it actually sets a lot of the national standards. And so, especially with building codes and construction as well, we see all the bad ideas come out of Victoria and then the rest of the states slowly adopt them. Well, not even slowly anymore. It's almost really quickly now.
Yeah.
Look,
is that a union thing or?
No, I think the unions are overplayed. Oh, look, Victoria has a strong union presence. Let's tie that in with the economic, failing of Victoria. Look, no, shout out to the union members out there. All power to you. You play an important part in keeping Australians safe and providing for the future of this country. But anything that's taken too far, you go one step too far, suddenly everything's out of balance. It has to be a win-win for everybody. You can't just have government employees winning and then small businesses going, we're falling over, which is where we're at. Now, I mean, Queensland, we're lucky. We've got an Olympics coming up. There's a lot of billions being sloshed into the economy up there. But, we are looking at a situation in Victoria where it could potentially economically drag down the rest of the country with it. Now, WA is shitting itself today over Chinese iron ore exports, starting to slow down. What happens then? What happens to the WA market? I've been berated online for this before, especially when it comes to talking about a pullback in the housing market. I mean, the truth is I make my living out of the housing market. That's a fact. But I'm also aware that in order to create opportunities in this country, we need to have a realistic market, not an unrealistic market. I'm not saying that needs price controls or anything like that, but balance needs to be restored. And balance is when we have the opportunity for Australians to get get a foot in the door, not a manipulated government-controlled market like it's about to become a Ponzi scheme even bigger than the one that it currently is. Victoria's already seen pullbacks in house prices over the last year, and we've seen a mass exodus of Victorians to Queensland. But they're getting better bang for buck. Capital flight.
I'm hyper aware of that number because, as I said before, electorally it's becoming untenable. After COVID, I think after 2 years, 200,000 Victorians moved from Victoria. Those are our people that would vote for our candidates. It's becoming untenable, and they're getting mass immigration.
That's what they want, though.
Yeah.
They want it. The multicultural soup down there, the mess that they've created, the opportunity for anything to kick off at any second, which is what it is. It has that feel about it. That's what they want.
They kind of get it's so funny. People say to me, "Oh, you've got so many Africans in Australia." We actually don't, but we get a particularly bad set of them. They're disproportionately coming out and doing all these crimes. I mean, we don't have this so much in New South Wales. In New South Wales, it's more like Middle Eastern crime and whatever. But in Victoria, Black Africans coming out and just having sword fights.
In the shopping centres.
Yeah, it's like...
outside the machete bin.
Deport these people. Like, get them out. What are they doing here? It's just... like,
some of these people seem to get bailed really quickly as well. And then the Premier announces, well, our tough new rules are working. Look, it's doublespeak, right? Everything they tell you that they're doing is a lie. They lie to you constantly. Everything, at every level, state, federal, council, all of it. Everything is a lie. None of it's truth anymore. We live in an Orwellian, weird, beautiful country that's being run by absolute clowns. And this is where we're at.
So let's talk about the rally that was yesterday. So in Sydney specifically, they were meant to be protesting outside the Opera House. They didn't get approval in court. The court slapped it down, and whatever you think of that. But then we saw the situation where they've gone and they've continued to protest despite the ceasefire deal. A lot of people saying, why would you still protest even when there's a ceasefire deal? Okay, we don't trust Netanyahu. Fair enough. But why don't I see one Aussie flag out there?
Well, that's because they hate Australia. They hate Australia. They don't care about Australia. Senator Lydia Thorpe standing there telling them that their cause is her cause, that the Palestinians and Aboriginals have got a synchronicity in their movement. I mean, the mental gymnastics it takes to try and conflate these two issues together is literally mind-blowing unto itself anyway. Look, I saw interviews yesterday that said, now we need justice for Palestine. We're marching for justice. What does that look like? How long's that shit going to drag on for? Excuse the language, but and not only that, but it's this constant, repetitious blood cult that never ends from a desert on the other side of the world. It's got nothing to do with us.
Literally.
And that's really the core of, my belief system is leave your shit behind. I don't want to know about it, and I certainly don't want to see it here. I'm sorry that so many Palestinians have died. I'm sorry that Israel is a mess. I'm sorry that the Middle East is what it is. But I mean, this war has just given the government more opportunities to import people from Gaza to come live in Australia. Great. More of that. Awesome. Bring that with you.
Honestly, it's got to be like, okay, we're going to give you a bag of goods, our values, economic opportunities, equality before the law, but you've got to drop your bad bag of goods at the door.
And I would have zero, if you screw up in any way, one parking ticket, I will deport your ass.
Exactly.
And not only that, I don't want to pay for anything either. You're coming here, no social security for you ever. You need to pay for your own private health. I'm sorry. If I went to live in Thailand or Bali or any other country around the world, that would be the rules that would apply. I can't tap into their government welfare system. Nor would I expect to. For some reason, Australia's got its arms open going, hey, come and take our tax dollars. It's fantastic. We love it because you'll vote for us.
And it used to be like that. It used to be like that where, the immigrants that came in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, they were like so sensitive to not rocking the boat. They would be like, don't be late on the Telstra bill. They might deport it. Totally irrational fear. But that was the mentality. And if you look at the statistics, back then they did take way less welfare than the new generation of immigrants coming in. And so my parents, they're looking at this and they're like, what's wrong with you guys? I mean, I don't know if you're, Rami, were your parents the same when they, it's like, why are you taking welfare? And in the UK, they openly brag about it. We are taking welfare and we are destroying your country.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's one of the reasons why it's very appealing for, people from the Middle East, for example, to come to Australia, because they give out free money.
Free money.
Well, it's funny. I was in Europe recently, and sorry to defer. It's like this is the Joel Jamal interview. I was in Europe, and it clicked. The reason why they're all moving west, of course, it's all about money. Of course it is. How stupid are you, Joel? They're not Greece is the gateway. It's the main gateway. Greece is bankrupt, so they're not staying there. They're moving west to the actual, Germany, France, the UK, because they want the handouts. It's all about the money. And when you realize that, you're like, close your doors. Like, what are you doing?
Well, it's about the money, but it's also about, wrecking your culture. Well, I mean, let's face it, globalist forces are at play here. We can break it down to petty things like, I mean, it's not petty because it's going to bankrupt us. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it helps implement a control system. It helps implement the agenda of you're living in a 15-minute city and a subscription lifestyle. Because let's face it, all these people coming from those third world or Middle Eastern countries or the subcontinent, they're fine with that, mate. Because here, it's no matter what, they could literally put shackles on your ankles and still be better than where they came from.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great, no problem. Whereas us, we have a problem with that. Because we used to we liked the way it was. Yeah. And we'd like to kind of keep it that way,
Well, going back to the March for Australia, let's talk solutions, because they all say, stop immigration. I'm like, okay, cool. What does that look legislatively? Now, I might cop a lot of flack for this. So lefties, I hope you're ready to clip this video. But when I did my debate with Abby Chatfield and Hannah Ferguson and Conrad, we were talking about immigration and I couldn't get a word out. I'm like, I'm the children of immigrants and I couldn't get a word out and say, no, it's too much. We need to lower it. The policy we need is a policy where we govern, we actually look at the values and we actually police them. Because everyone that comes in, there's like 20 Aussie values. They sign it and there's no assessment. We actually need to properly assess these people and we need a language test again.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about values, it's loose in my opinion. Oh, the Liberal Party has values. We need to adhere to the values. The Labor Party has values, Australia has values. No, I would argue that we have culture and we have an identity here. And identity is a really hard thing to fly the flag on, but our culture is unique. Yeah. And I want to preserve that. And unfortunately, the way you carry on or the way you speak or the way you're, conducting yourself in our country is not conducive with our culture.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I have to say goodbye to you.
Yeah, look, I agree. So where I was going with this was legislatively what that looks like is the White Australia policy. They actually had a legislative framework to reject people that didn't have our values. So when I look at the immigration that's going into Australia right now, I'm not seeing white South African farmers. I'm not seeing people that are, white Christians getting in.
Well, if they are, they're the minority, I would imagine. There's probably some, but not a heck of a lot. But let's face it, let's talk about that, what that immigration pathway looks like. Yeah. You've got a wonderful office here. I think there's an immigration agent sharing this level with you when I was hunting around.
There is, to my chagrin.
They're obviously on the tit, getting paid, creating pathways to Australian citizenship. Yep. And this is what it is. You've got 2.7 million temporary visa holders in this country right now that all want to be Australian citizens. None of them want to go back to Bangladesh, mate. They don't want to go back to Mumbai. They don't want to go back to the Middle East, and they don't want to go back to sub-Saharan Africa. They want to be here, and they want to stay here. And they will do everything they can to make that happen. Now, Australia last year, generous country that we are with our wonderful benefit system, made 446,000 of them permanent residents. That's a record number. But we're reducing the permanent migration number. We're going to bring it back. But you're not touching temporary visas. Yeah. But, that's because the temporary visas feed the university sector, which breeds the ideology that's undermining our culture. This whole thing. So legislatively, what does it look like? During COVID, we shut the borders. We shut the borders. Yeah. And the house prices still went up. So let's be. If we shut the borders, the housing market will collapse and no one will have babies. I can guarantee you that plenty of people were making babies during COVID because there wasn't much else to do. Yeah. And the house prices went up because the banks lowered interest rates to support the property market. Look, the Ponzi will continue being the Ponzi, whether you let in 2 million people or not. You free up some housing stock, you take some pressure off the pricing, and you get 250,000 Australians. I know they say it's only 125, but it's probably 2 or 3 times. So let's say 250,000 Australians that are living rough right now in cars, in car parks, in tents, into houses. Look, coming into your office, Joel, beautiful spot that it is here. You got a homeless guy sleeping outside your door next to a Red Bull and a for lease sign.
Yeah, that's new.
Welcome to Sydney.
Yeah.
But we've got the same things in Brisbane. Melbourne, dude, you've got a homeless guy outside every doorstep. Yeah. So is it working? No, it's not working. You drive anywhere from Brisbane or Sunshine Coast down to the Gold Coast at the moment, you just see homeless people living in parks. That's what you see. That's not what it used to be like. Homeless people used to be a choice, not the only, there's no other option for me.
Yeah.
Right? So when good Australians, working Australians, and I know this because I know lots of people in business. I've been in business for a really long time. I know guys that own $100 million plus businesses, and I know guys that own $1 million businesses. And they all say the same thing to me. My apprentices and my employees have got nowhere to live, and they're asking if they can sleep in the car park because they can use the toilet here at night time. Think about that, mate.
It's criminal. It's actually
not just criminal, it's treasonous.
Absolutely.
It's treasonous. Now, combine that with a senator telling you that they want to burn down Parliament, and I'm sorry, but I'm ready for lynching.
Yeah. Well, she's how much is she on? 450K a year?
Plus
Benefits, plus maybe a pension in a few years.
And I'll throw it out there. She's probably getting a kickback somewhere along the lines from some foreign interest that hates us.
Yeah.
There's lots of those around right now, and there's strings everywhere. As I've found out since I walked into this minefield, foreign interests are pulling strings everywhere right now. I don't think your average Australian who doesn't understand how the preferential voting system works fully understands what is happening in the centres of power in this country.
Yeah, and I think it was a real wake-up call when Charlie Kirk was shot because, people might say, oh, Jono, what are you talking about? They're lynching people. These people mean it when they say burn down Parliament. They mean it. It was only 2022, late 2021, old Parliament House was on fire, the front doors, by an Aboriginal group that did it.
Yep.
And so these people intend on doing it. It wasn't an accident.
Yep.
And they celebrated when Charlie Kirk was shot. A very mild guy, doesn't swear at all, Christian values, and he's just debating everyone, even his opponents, shot him, celebrated it. That's what they want for us. And so I don't think it's hyperbole when you say they want to kill us.
No, I remember seeing what was online even when Jared Rennick got taken out of the Liberal Party. Yeah, when Jared Rennick didn't win a seat in the last federal election. I mean, I watched. That's not a real assassination, but it was a political assassination. Let's be clear about it. They destroyed his political career. The level of hate online for Jared was insane. I'm a big fan of Jared. I love the guy. Super smart, and I really wanted to see him re-win his seat. He would have been a great opportunity for Australia First to actually have a spot in Parliament.
No, we need him, and we'll get back to that later. But that's the component of this machine we're missing. How you actually get them elected. And that's why I love what this is, this movement. But going back to it, education. You mentioned a few numbers about immigration. The education visas, is it something like 2.1 million students in Australia currently? Something like that?
I don't think it was that high. I thought it was 1.5, which
okay, cool.
Is a stupidly big number anyway. Sure. But either way, it's too much.
So what I was going to say, you mentioned the place next door. So that is a new tenant. The one before it, they were doing fake education visas, basically. They were doing fake degrees.
Yeah, of course.
So people could come in.
Yeah.
And basically get this fake degree and then go back and out and work. And by the way, for those of you that have no idea about the visa situation, you're not allowed to work on an education visa, okay? You're not allowed to work. Now, I would see these guys come in fluoro vests, and they'd walk in, they'd go do their 5 minutes, they'd walk out, go back to the construction site. Look, guys, this is not on. This is not on. And
digital ID will stop that.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Literally. So no, this stuff makes me really angry when I see it, because it's like, guys, we've got to take care. You said it perfectly at the rally last time. We've got to close the borders. We've got to get our own people sorted, get our country sorted. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about. The instability culturally with what's going on. We did an interview on Thursday and we were talking with our guests, and they were shocked when I said the Aussie accent is going extinct.
Yep.
And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, no one's picking it up. Like, I go to areas and I don't hear the Aussie accent. People hear my accent and they freak out. They're like, why do you have the Aussie accent? I'm like, why don't you?
Aussie accent. Like, I go to areas and I hardly see one white person.
Yeah, it's like spot a white dude. I go to Carlingford Court, the court I grew up in. There's no white people. That place used to be like farms.
Except if it's a homeless person, it would usually be white. sadly.
It's, yeah.
I was in Adelaide a couple of weeks ago and, seeing a friend down there, and a mate of mine said to me, mate, when you drive back to the airport, keep an eye on the road. Tell me if you see any white people. And I generally don't think that way. I don't really notice people by their colour because I've done so much travelling around the world. I mean, I've worked in a lot of places, met a lot of people. Wouldn't consider myself racist because otherwise I wouldn't go and visit other cultures and happily do that.
Yeah.
And then I noticed I was the only white person I saw all the way from where he lived to the airport. And even at the airport, I was checking in and there was no Australians there. You know, this is a really weird statistic. 40 million people have been born on this continent since 1788. 40 million. If you were born in this country, you are one of 40 million people in the history of the planet. It's not much, mate.
It's not.
And it's not. Doesn't take very much to wreck that.
Yeah.
India could export 40 million people here tomorrow, and it wouldn't even be a blip on their radar. You know, so this is a unique culture.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful culture.
Yeah.
The Australian language is amazing. I was in Washington just walking the monuments, and I had this random lady come up and tap me on the shoulder and goes, I could listen to you Aussies talk all day.
Yeah.
You know, and just you see that when you're over there.
I did. No,
From Australia.
I did. Well, I confused them because I'm such a weird mix of culture and ethnicity. But no, I have a lot of fun with it, and they're just like there's an unearned love of Aussies over there.
There is.
There's nothing you or I did to earn that, but our parents and the strength of our character in the past is what they remember.
A lot of people say that you know your patriotism is a legacy of the shit that people did before you came. I would argue against that.
Right.
You're sitting here in a studio in Australia, building a business, building a message, trying to build a movement. You've been trying to point people in the right direction for a really long time. You have played a part in the shaping of this country.
Thank you.
I served it. I built businesses. I've employed people. I've had daughters here. I've played a part in the shaping of this country. No one can say that I haven't.
Right.
You know, we might come from whatever stock, you know, eventually got on a wooden boat and came here back whenever. But at the end of the day, we are part of the settling foundation of this country.
Mm.
And being born here gives you a special tie to this place as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, look, that's why I bring up the accent thing, because I was watching a great video by Jordan Peterson on this, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up. But Peterson was making the point that when it comes to high trust and low trust societies, he wasn't talking about this specifically. He was talking about trust when you're talking with someone and when they betray that trust. And I thought it was such a great clip because what he's talking about is basically what you and I talk about when it comes to high trust societies. When I hear the Aussie accent, I expect certain values.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, this guy probably went to this sort of schooling in this sort of community. He probably played a bit of rugby, bit of cricket, bit of this and that. And I'm like, okay, I feel a little bit more comfortable trusting my kids with that guy rather than the guy that can't say a word of English.
Yep.
And I think that's so critical. And that's people are like, why are you harping on about the accent? That's why. It's immediate trust in a foreign country. And that's why I ask about your travel, because you get it. Like when you've traveled, you know what it's like to not have that air of trust in society.
Oh.
And what I'm really worried about, and what I want to hear your thoughts about, as trust goes down, what happens with business?
Well, it becomes unfunctional. I mean, it doesn't work. And this is what we're heading into. This is Australia now. I can listen to your accent on the phone, and I try not to make preconceived judgments about it. But over the years of 17 years in business, I've dealt with pretty much every type of person you can possibly imagine. And in my businesses, we do B2C, business to customer clients, front-facing retail, mums and dads. Why? Because I know what I'm getting and I know what I can work with.
Yeah.
When you do B2B, it's a completely different story because you could have directors with all sorts of bankruptcies and histories and they want 30 and 60-day accounts and, they won't pay you and they don't care. But with mums and dads, I can knock on the door and go, is there a problem? Let's sort this out and let's have a conversation about how we rectify that. That's the difficult conversation part.
Right.
Australia is becoming a very low trust society. You don't even need to spend long online to see that because even my arc of emergence as a figure with this march and the social media content I started making, people are like, oh, you're clearly owned by Zion. You're getting your $7,000 per post and you're clearly a Jewish shill. And then, oh, you're a Nazi, you're a neo, and so it doesn't matter.
No.
Around the peripheries of where I am, everyone's at you anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's because we live in a low trust society. So I actually made a video about it. Now, every time someone accuses me of that, I just post a video link and go, watch this. Yeah.
What was the video?
It was called Shill, M-I Shill.
Right.
And it was just me doing what I normally do on the treadmill with my weighted vest on, taking the piss out of the people that have a go at me, and you can ignore that stuff and just keep going on. But I'm also, I do get a little bit offended by it.
Yeah, me too.
Because Australia used to be a high trust society.
Yeah.
Social media hasn't helped. We know that.
Yeah.
But banning under 16s from being on social media, who make up less than 1% of social media content that's consumed, isn't going to solve that problem either.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of really pissed off kids that are going to be voting in 2028, mate, when they realise that Snapchat's been turned off on December 10th.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out.
I'm really excited about that. All of Gen Z can vote in 2028.
Kick them in the ass,
Yeah.
And look, one of the things that, and I don't know if you see this in your community or not as well, but the kids that I talk to now are so red-pilled. Oh, my God. And maybe it's because I've surrounded myself with my daughters who are, probably closer to my political spectrum than the schools they went to.
Yeah.
But their friends, the kids that I meet through the things that I do, mate, like, I've got a bunch of tradies working for me at the moment. They're like, Scotty, loved your video, mate. When are we marching? When are we marching? These are kids that, they're carpenters.
Yeah.
I think this government's in for a rude surprise when all the tradies of this country, because everyone thinks the tradies vote Labor.
Yeah.
There's about 100,000 CFMEU members that do. The rest of them vote One Nation, mate. Or they vote conservatively.
Yeah.
So these kids are coming to Christ, which is another thing that I've seen. Like, Scott, I went to church for the first time last weekend. I'm like, mate.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you do that after you did bucket bonks for breakfast or before the beers? Which one was it? But at least you went.
Yeah.
There's a thing happening out there.
Well, you asked about our community, Rami. Our people are basically Nazis. Like, they are really hardcore.
Yeah.
No, seriously, bro. Like, no. They make the white Gen Zs look chill, because we have the ethnic armor. And then we have the shared history of persecution in the Middle East. Right. So we're pissed off. So just the Maronites, so Lebanese Catholics that have come here, that are basically here in Western Sydney. We have over 200,000 in Western Sydney, and they're all basically like me, where they're like, Joel, go harder. Why aren't you saying this and that? These people are the most peed off a mass immigration. They don't like Indians. They don't like Pakistanis.
Well,
they don't like. Yeah.
Every race I came across is racist, except for white people.
Exactly.
My personal experience.
Exactly. It's like you look at the foreign cabinets in China, Japan, Pakistan, India. It's all Indians, and it's all their national culture. But you look at Australia, it's like we could have diversity quotas.
I mean, you're Lebanese. Try getting hired at an Indian
firm,
IT firm,
yeah,
or go get hired at a Vietnamese restaurant if you're not Vietnamese.
Exactly. And this happens with everything. And this is why I think a lot of the Jews they cop a bit of flack too. I know people that used to work in Jewish organizations, and like it would be like a products company, but all the hires were Jewish. That's because they're watching each other's backs. Same with the Indians, but white people don't have that shared consciousness, and they've got to build that.
I think we do. I just think that it's been beaten out of us, though.
Right.
And the next logical step for this government will be to, not just gender diversity and quotas as far as males and females go, or whatever a woman is these days. It'll be how many ethnics have you got working for you? How many Indians with a passport? And when that happens, my God, we're almost at the end game now for small to medium enterprise in Australia.
Yeah.
Add that to it, and that'll almost be the death knell for it.
Well, going back to the ethnic thing, in Western Sydney, those groups, they vote the highest against same-sex marriage. They vote against climate change. They vote against all these things. They're voting One Nation. They're voting Gerard Rennick. And so, and look, I don't want to harp on about the point, but this is why I get frustrated when I see, some of the NSN guys ragging on people like me, and I'm like, you have no idea how aligned we are on a lot of these basic values. Basically,
they're coming back. I honestly think that the far right well, I don't think they are far right, but I think that, they're actually something completely different to what the definition of left and right is. I think that they just haven't had a sensible solution to look at before. Look, plenty of them love being Nazis, mate. That's great. Go be a Nazi.
Yeah.
You're saying your own communities are probably more Nazi than most other people are in this country. They just needed something to go, hang on, that they're not owned by Jewish money or whatever foreign interest is here, there, and everywhere. And it's truly an Australian first movement. Yeah, I can get behind that.
Yeah, exactly. And look, when I was overseas, politics is the art of collaboration on things you agree on. And look, there are going to be some things we don't agree on with some people, but you got to build a coalition based on certain things. Now, you won't fulfill 100% of what everyone's saying, but generally, my community, and I consider that Australians, I don't consider that, Middle Easterners. I'm sure you'd agree, Rami. We want, so Western Sydney, we're an eclectic group. We don't want mass immigration. We just don't. We don't like lockdowns. We didn't like the treatment during COVID. We don't like climate change. They tried to ban open fires in Western Sydney. We railed against it and beat it. There's a very angry community out there. And when I look at videos of you talking in Queensland at the first rally, saying you are my people, I'm like, yes, dial that up. Dial that up. We need more of that sense of camaraderie that we used to have, where it was like if someone's car broke down, you'd pull over, 2-3 cars would pull over and help him, rather than just everyone would just drive past.
Yeah.
With this fluoridated stare.
Fluoridated
stare. Not my problem.
The crystallized pineal gland.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but that's what it is, isn't it? Like when I remark, when we go to rural areas, they haven't lost that.
Yeah.
If someone's pulled over, 2, 3, 4 cars pull over, what do you need, mate? I'll give you my wheel if you need.
Or if you haven't seen a car for half an hour, the next car waves at you.
Flashes or something.
I know.
Yeah.
The high trust society, right?
100. Yeah.
Asking somebody for direction. Jesus Christ. Almost like nobody knows the area anymore.
Yeah. They don't know English, bro. No. You ask them, they're like, oh, I don't know where to go. It's like, okay, bro, it's very...
You're talking about my experience trying to find this building this morning.
Anyway, mate, forgive me if I'm opining too much, but this is a topic which it is the number one in this country, in my view. Second to that is cost of living, and third is basically climate change and net zero. And the policies they're trying to bring under that sham. But let's go to defense, because I want to talk about one of the videos you recently made. Do you mind just filling in the audience on why you made that video?
Well, I'm ex-Air Force. I did my service, my period that I did, 4 years full-time. I did another year as well, just for shits and giggles. They promised a deployment that didn't happen, but that's how the military works. Yeah. We had an incident on the Amberley Air Force Base. That's where I served, and where a guy broke into the base and spent 3 hours running amok with a forklift.
Right.
Now we have 12 F-18 Growlers. F-18s are, the Super Hornets, and we're very proud of those planes. We only have 12. 12. Think about that. 12. They don't. There's not a lot of depth in defence, we call it. And depth in defence means you have a line, then you have a secondary line, and you have a third line. So if something gets breached, you've got some capacity there.
Yeah.
If that guy knew what he was doing, he would have taken out all 12 of those F-18 Growlers, or if not all 12, maybe half of them, and left you basically defenceless. And when we say take them out, well, what does that look like? I walk around with a can of petrol and just light a fire under each plane. That plane is now inoperable and unserviceable, and it will not be able to fly. We rely heavily on the Americans for parts for those F-18 Growlers. Those parts don't come.
Even if you just threw paint at them, right?
Yep.
Compromise.
Throw something in the edge. Mate, look, I trained as an airfield defence guard, and people go, you're Air Force, you're not really a soldier. And
I was waiting for that.
We cop shit all the time.
I was like, you're combing your hair, right?
Yeah. And he was like, oh, yeah, just Air Force guys. But actually, our job was to patrol, and to work in war zones. We didn't actually do the role in Australia. That base security is security police, what they do, Air Force police, and the military dog handlers. Our job was to patrol outside the wire for threats that could enter the base. So that means most threats that could enter a base would be special forces. Right. Special forces infiltrating our perimeter to take out our hard assets. Yep. And it was when I finished, 7 months of infantry minor training, and I was fitter than I'd ever been in my whole life, and my job was to carry around a 12-kilo gun and all of its ammunition and just shoot the shit out of it.
Yep.
The CEO of our squadron said to us that I will literally happily sacrifice your lives to protect those planes. That's it. You know, the plane is worth more than you because we can't replace them.
No.
And so the video was really about our ability to project force. And our Australian Defence Force has to have a capacity to defend ourselves. We live in a very, very rough region at the moment.
Forgive my rudeness, mate, but let's go to what other countries are doing, because we're not doing anything on this front. I was looking at a news story, which I'm trying to pull up from last night. Basically, Russia saying that they're going to be creating 1,000 new tanks over the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's see what Australia's doing in the next 3 years. So we've currently got 75 tanks.
Yeah.
And in 2028, we are increasing that to 75 tanks.
Yeah.
So we're not having any increase.
We're actually sending our old ones to Ukraine.
Yeah, well, exactly. And so the ones we have, and this was the phone call I was rudely doing before you got in. I know you wanted to hear this. So one of my guests I had a month ago, Heath Goddard, he was telling me that the tanks we have are so useless. They have a massive heat signature. They are too heavy. They have to stay in Canberra. They stop working when you drive them through water. And they're so heavy, if you drive them over a bridge, they're way too heavy for the bridge.
70 ton Abrams. Yeah. They're a heck of a vehicle and a beautiful platform when it comes to projecting power in the right application, designed for a European war, not the type of peacekeeping stuff and regional things that Australia does. I don't think we've ever deployed any of our Abrams anyway.
Right.
And as I heard it, the Ukrainians didn't really want them because in this new battlefield against FPV drones and all the rest of it, they literally they're dead in seconds. They don't last on the battlefield, which is what all the tankies have found out over in Ukraine. As Russia found out, they've lost thousands so far.
Yeah.
Hold on, aren't we supposed to bring built EV tanks now?
EV tanks. Well, we got EV Bushmasters.
Are you serious?
Yeah, no, we do. We have EV Bushmasters made in Australia because, the environment and shit. How do you think those burning Bushmasters are doing in Ukraine right now? I mean, look, the thing is with military hardware, wars are really handy for burning off all the stuff you got sitting in stock. And if you recently remember, Thailand and was it Cambodia had a bit of a shooting match on the border there. And the reason for that is because those rockets, those weapons, all of that stuff, it has a shelf life. And so the best way to get rid of it is, let's make sure we all get a combat badge and shoot the guys over there, and then they get to shoot back at us and they get a combat badge. And then we can say we've got some experience shooting this shit.
Yeah.
So don't discount that a lot of these border conflicts you see happen in that way. Interestingly enough, the other week I had an Indian guy come up to me and goes, look, Indians aren't the problem, Muslims are the problem. Okay, look, I know you guys don't like, Islam as a religion because you're all Hindus. Yep. Oh, no, you need to understand it's the Muslims are causing all the problems. I said, mate, you guys and Pakistan were about to nuke each other 3 months ago. You had the largest air battle since World War II, and you're telling me that they're the problem? Oh, we were defending our territory. I'm sure they'll tell you the same thing, so.
Yeah, Yeah, there's a lot I can say on that, and I know the Indians are going to come after me. But
defense-wise, we are well and truly lagging behind, especially in this new age of warfare.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Australians bad above their average. We are heavy hitters for what we are, but we also need to remember that this is an asymmetrical warfare. We're not just talking about kinetic warfare anymore. We're talking about cyber. We're talking about missiles at ranges that would blow your mind.
Yeah.
Now, Australia has an opportunity to be an arsenal for the Southern Hemisphere. We should be making missiles here.
Yeah.
We should be getting chips and we should be manufacturing missiles in Australia, and that would give us teeth. We don't have teeth right now.
No.
We rely very heavily on the Americans to go, if it's a shittiest fan, we'll send some of your stuff down there.
Yeah.
Look, when our guys first deployed to Timor in 1999, that was when I was in the Air Force. And the reason I did that extra year was for a Timor deployment. We didn't have enough body armor for our deployable guys. We ended up, doing a deal with the Americans at the last minute to get Kevlar for the guys. And that's why when you see footage of them overseas, they're in OzCam with Woodland Cam armor on because we didn't have any. We had to borrow some from the Yanks. That was our capacity.
There's no reason we shouldn't have industry here. It's actually ridiculous. So I'm still trying to recover from the EV comment about the tanks. Like the idiocy, it's like, you do know these are meant to destroy. Maximal. But we have a lot of Aussie companies. They're providing drones to Ukraine. We're not commissioning them right now. A lot of companies that I think is Austral. I can't remember, but they make ships for the Americans, but not Australia. And when Scott Morrison went to the White House while Trump was in, Trump was showing him an Austral ship, And Scott Morrison just standing there like a pleb, like, oh, we don't use them. Like, it's like, why don't you use them? If it's good enough for the Yanks, it's good enough for us.
We got a massive gap at the moment too. I mean, submarines are obsolete now. You know, we got a long wait until we get a potential Virginia class. You know, the biggest defence deal in the history of Australia. Let's be honest about it. Australians are really shit at defence deals. You know, we developed our own attack helicopter here instead of buying the American version. And what did we do last week? We just received our first version of the American Apache because we realised that ours was shit. You know, so we have a long history of doing really badly when it comes to defence.
I was surprised to hear they came from Arizona. Those Apache helicopters.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I do believe that the Taliban almost had as many as we did after the collapse of Afghanistan. I'm like, we're not a tier 1 power.
Yeah.
But no, look.
We rely heavily on the fact that we think the Americans are going to come and save us if the shit hits the fan. But the way this government dances around between China and the US, that relationship, in my opinion, has been badly degraded.
It makes me so angry because early on in our founding, within the first 100 years, you know, just after Federation, we ordered a tier 2 Navy. 5 years it took to come. 5 years, a full tier 2 Navy. And it arrived a year before the breakout of World War I. A lot of people are like, oh, you know, the Germans, you know, we fought them in Europe. No. We kicked their ass in the Pacific. You didn't even know because it was that quick.
Yeah.
Because we had the Navy ready to go. Whereas these submarines, it's going to take 25 years from the time that we order them to when they arrive. That's the time it took from the start of World War I to the end of World War II. A lot of shit.
That's right. Now look at the technology leap in that period of time as well. I'd hate to see Australia end up in a position like Ukraine. I mean, I know that geopolitically we're in a very different area. We've got a great ocean, you know, around us that kind of protects Australia. We've just done a defence deal with PNG. And look, I'm just a bystander observer of this, and there's a lot of smarter people than me out there about our, you know, the security of our region. But this heavy reliance on someone else to turn up and save the day leaves us exposed. Actually, that comes back to our she'll be right attitude.
Right.
You know, our she'll be right attitude that's been weaponized against us in Australia, that's resulted in mass immigration and the undermining of our culture. And it will be the same thing again if war breaks out in you know, the South China Sea. If China invades Taiwan, mate, how much depth have we got for that fight? It's not much.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was going to say before with the she'll be right thing, it goes back to the Rats of Tobruk. The Rats of Tobruk, they fought against crazy odds in World War One. They fought against, World War II, against the Desert Fox, Rommel. And Rommel, you know, he basically couldn't get past these guys because they were like, she'll be right, just get on with the effing job. It wasn't she'll be right brushed under the carpet. So you're totally right. It's been abused against. And
like Rommel even famously said that if he had to, you know, invade hell, he'd use the Australians to take it and the New Zealanders to hold it.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty good compliment.
I'd like to think that was real, but I can't find the reference. But I was going to say that as well. But you know, back, I was saying to Bob Catter, because you would have seen the clip of Bob saying, look, put a rifle in every young Australian and teach them how to shoot.
Bob's always advocated for that. I love it.
He's a good man. I was saying to him, and he had a bit of a chuckle to himself. I said, mate, so I went to the King's School. That's where the sword comes from, the cadet corps stuff. Which I showed you.
Yeah.
And again, guys, this is not real military stuff. This is just like...
But it's still something to be super proud of. It's understanding the culture and what it means.
And I am proud of it. You know, give me a map, give me a compass. I can chart my way through valleys and end up exactly where I want to with a grid reference. But at the same time, they used that I am experiencing a watered down version of it. They used to have rifles they would carry with them. They had rifles that they would march with. We did learn how to shoot, but it was very limited compared to back in the day. And it makes you understand what's happened to this country. They've watered down everything that gave us teeth.
That's right.
And I look back at it, and Bob said, yeah, we used to do that as well. You know, my father, grandfather, you know, they'd be guarding the airports during the wars with their guns, you know.
And when the shit hit the fan, like when the Japanese, you know, invaded northern New Guinea and were working their way down the Kokoda Track, all of the Australian soldiers were in the Middle East at that point. They're in North Africa. We had no one left to defend. So what did they do? They mustered up all the reservists in Australia. My great-granddad was a reservist on a shore defence battery out of Fremantle in Western Australia.
Right.
Mate, you're going to New Guinea. Him and all his mates, off they went. He was a married man with multiple kids at that point in his mid-30s.
Yeah.
You're going to Kokoda, mate. They sent them all up there, barely equipped. And
Wow, I salute you, sir. That's amazing.
And look, I didn't really understand what this guy's experience was when I was a young kid because he was my great-grandfather, So it's like you don't really conceive of that. It was only when, I had his medals handed down to me that I went, and I did some research and I went, oh, shit, that's the story, But that's where Ukraine ended up with. Once all the men were gone, and then they're rounding up civilians off the street and sending them to the front. That's why 1 million Ukrainians have been buried now,
Can I ask, and we've got about 15 left, what do you say to people that say, you know what, Scott, you're a warmonger. How are you going to pay for any of this? I thought you were Australia first. We've got to take care of our own people. What would you say to those people that are sort of would say something?
North Korea is a great example. They have an economy the size of Tasmania. Now think about that. No, seriously.
Yeah.
They also have an ICBM capacity with a nuclear payload. With an economy the size of Tasmania. Now, I know that guys in Korea get paid $1 a day in North Korea and they're lucky to live and they're all starving. But the reality is Australia is we're a super smart country. We have a great capacity. The ultimate deterrent would potentially be nuclear weapons, and call me a warmonger. But weapons make people. What's that saying? If in a well-armed society, everyone's polite with each other. Yeah. I think regionally, probably not nuclear weapons because that would potentially push Indonesia to have nuclear weapons as well, which wouldn't be a great move for us. But we need to have something with teeth. So, you want to have missiles that can reach out and touch someone a long, long way away. We've just done a deal for these new frigates coming out of Japan, and they've got some great vertical missile launch tubes, which is fantastic, which will also counter the, potential strategic threat we have in our region. But we need to make sure that our missiles are longer, better, bigger, and faster. And so that's more of a deterrent. And if we're not, why are we buying them? What's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you need to have the biggest guns on the block.
Yeah, I asked Bob the similar question. He said, Joel, there's so much wealth here. Australia, as it stands, has the same rough economy size as Russia. And look at Russia. They're doing 1,000 tanks in 3 years. We're doing none.
And they've managed to finance a war for the last 2 years, no problem.
Exactly. And the other thing is we have so much energy-rich minerals, gas, we're not even exploiting at all. And it's like we can pay for all this stuff. We could
literally save the planet, Joel.
Yeah, that's right.
What about the Department of Blue Hairs that need to get paid?
Yeah.
Come on, mate. What about the NDIS that's going to cost us $80 billion in the next 3 years? Come on, mate.
Yeah.
You can't afford missiles.
Exactly. And the Aboriginal industry, $40 billion a year, like our defense is $50 billion.
I look at it from this perspective. I've trained and, gone to the gym my whole life. Train. People, what do you train for? You're a dickhead. You're in your 50s. Why are you still going to the gym? Because I want to be ready in case something happens. It's as simple as that, And so why would you have a strong deterrence in your military? Because you want to be ready in case something happens. Yeah. We've got a great fighting ethos. Australians are awesome. But, you look at what's happened since Afghanistan. We'll never know the full story of Afghanistan. We did our absolute best to destroy guys like Ben Roberts-Smith, and what's his name, Heston Russell. And, look, great guys, special forces guys, to put their lives on the line for this country. And then what'd we do? We pissed on them when they got home. And, we've done that, repeatedly for years now.
And at least in America, they honor them. They let them first on the flights. They, honor them at the ceremonies. They sing their anthem with pride.
I'll probably take the Starship Troopers approach to how nationalism should work. And I think that I don't think it would be a bad thing to have national service. Bob and I probably agree on that.
Yeah.
But I think that should be structured in a way that you could potentially go and work for your local ambulance. It's some kind of civic duty over a number of years to understand how society should work and then potentially earn your voting rights from that. Hey, I'm about ideas. I'm just going to throw ideas out there.
It's like the Romans. I like that. That's good.
Well, we're going to bring 10,000 PNG guys in to join our defence force. Have you been to PNG?
No, I haven't.
We should never have given it away in the 70s. I'm going to cop some flack for that statement. Sure. But, when my granddad, Vietnam veteran, after Vietnam, after he returned from there, he did the last deployment of his career in New Guinea when Australians were based out in New Guinea in the 70s, before we allowed PNG to become a self-determining country and to install their own government. We had a line of defense. There was a reason for that. We fought and died there, and we went, if someone's going to come from the north, think about who lives in the north, and come down towards Australia, we want to make sure we can stop them here instead of in North Queensland. Yeah. Now, the PNG government will literally I'm not going to get sued, hopefully, will literally do anything for $1. Today it's Australia, we're doing a deal with you, but tomorrow it could be China.
Yeah.
You don't know that.
And that's happening in a lot of countries, Solomon Islands, and others. And I'm really worried about that because it's like, guys, this is our neighbors. Like we have a big moat. Sure, Beijing is closer to London than it is to Sydney. It's 18,000 k's away, but they have a massive navy, over 80 submarines, drones, everything you could want in a navy.
Biggest navy in the world. Yeah, absolutely. But they just don't have a great blue water fleet. They're a little more strategically based closer to home. But depth is depth. What did Stalin say? There's a special beauty in volume. And beauty.
That's it.
I guess the Chinese are taking that approach to it.
Right. I know which books you're reading.
March for Australia, look, and this is a lot of people say March for Australia is about ending mass immigration, and that's the number one key thing that we need to get a hold of here, because without control of our borders, we don't have a sovereign nation right now. But we need to have rational conversations about what comes next for Australia. Australia's we've got a lot of problems here right now, a lot of problems. Everyone I know in business is looking for a way to get out of Australia.
Yeah.
You think about that. We're talking about billions, hundreds of billions of dollars that are potentially going to leave the country in the next 12 to 24 months. And your government's going to do everything they can to stop that from happening. But then they're going to let companies like Pfizer offshore all their profits to Ireland. Mate, you're running ads on Facebook. I'm running ads on Facebook. All the money's going to Ireland. Why? 10% withholding tax, mate. That's it. So why wouldn't you move your business overseas? Because all these mega corporates have done that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, it's a welcome seeing you involved because, as I said at the start of the podcast, I just want to see more involvement from people. I think if the better cross-section we get of Aussies that are out there that are proud of this country and want to help it, the better politics will be. Unfortunately, I think it has been taken over by this parasitic class that just sort of extracts all this value out of it. And they don't care if it dies.
No, well, they want to keep the host alive as long as they can. They don't want to kill it outright, kind of like COVID, just hang in there and spread a little bit of disaster around. That's what this parasitic class want to do. They want to make sure their bread's well buttered. But, ultimately they run out of money. Look at Victoria. It's going to be on life support economically shortly. Yeah, they're going to get you to pay for that.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. So tell me, with the March for Australia, for example, what is the plan? So if people want to know where to find the date and the location and the time, go to marchforaustralia.com.au?
No, .org.
.org.
Right. You'll see every city where there's an event being held there, which is every capital city, and a whole bunch of tier 2 regionals and tier 3s as well. So in Queensland, for example, Townsville, Mackay, Gladstone, Rockhampton, Cairns, it's all happening. Newcastle, I believe, has an event down here in New South Wales too.
Right.
But every capital city, Australia, you need to turn up. We're looking at the camera here for brevity.
Yep.
You need to show up. This is the moment to turn up. Don't go, she'll be right, and go, I've got something else on this weekend, or I've got some mates coming over. Grab your mates and go to the march.
Absolutely.
Grab your mates and go to the march. I don't. And look, I know you did say the other day, Joel, that you wouldn't take your children in Melbourne. I'll be honest with you. Got 4 teenage daughters.
Sure.
I would take my girls.
Okay.
I would take my girls because I want them to see what Melbourne is. I'll keep them safe. My mates would keep them safe. But but Melbourne, you need to be exposed. Melbourne needs to be exposed. Australians, patriots, get out in Melbourne and film it. Upload that video, share it around, get people seeing it, because the rest of Australia needs to understand what that soup is right now.
Absolutely. No, look, when I said Melbourne, it was more the kids and prams. I think adolescents.
I'd probably be reluctant on taking a pram.
Yeah.
Anyone who couldn't move quicker than 20-second, 100-meter movement.
100%. Adolescents, I think is fine. Anything above like 12, 13. But I do worry. And have someone with, a bit of an audience with families and whatever, people, they ask me, okay, honestly, Joel, is it okay? And I'm like, look, it's fine if you're everywhere but Melbourne. But Melbourne, if the kid's in a pram, don't take them. If you've got a newborn, don't take them.
And look, if you're from an ethnic community, you talk about your the culture and the community that you come from, Joel. You guys should be proud to be there as well. Fly that flag, and I'm sure they will be. We had Indian people at the last event, we had Chinese people at the last event, but they weren't identifying that. We had a Chinese guy in Brisbane selling merch.
Yeah.
And that wasn't authorized merch. He was like, I come here in 1992.
That was so good.
T-shirts. It was awesome.
That was great.
And so, he was Australian as they come, and he was safe. Everybody loved him, and look, we are controlling the speakers in Brisbane. We're not just going to have an open mic session. We don't believe in that. Sure. We are going to control that. But I say to our patriots out there, if you don't like who's speaking on the stage, just lower your flag a little, just show us in the crowd. If you're not a fan.
Yeah.
Let's have a vote of democracy in the crowd there with our Australian flags. I think everyone's going to be flying them very high anyway.
No, that's phenomenal. I said to you, I think when you said you were going to be helping with the Queensland one, I would love to be up there. I would absolutely love it. But no one, as far as I understand, is going to do the national stream. And it's become a bit of almost a ceremony now. Like it's almost like a ritual where we've got to do it because a lot of people, they don't have you've got to send Rami out with the camera. You've got to pay for the drones to get up there to capture the crowds.
Yeah, you do.
And you've got to do it nationally and no one can do that. And I'm like, well, look, if that's my contribution, happy to do it. We streamed all the speeches last time, including the NSN guys in Sydney. And I was like, I really didn't mind doing that because I trust my audience to make up their own mind. That is what journalism is about. Put the information out there, unedited, unlike the media, and just give it to people. Then you do your commentary after it. All right. But what we can't do is what the media does, where they take a 5-second grab and then they say that characterizes the whole march. No, that is not journalism.
They might have done that with Lydia yesterday at the pro-Palestine march. Who knows, right? I mean, this is what. But there are a lot of people turned out yesterday. We need to turn out in bigger numbers. You are Australians. This is your country. Turn out in bigger numbers and get ready for what comes next. Because marching isn't going to fix the problem. You need to get involved in your local community. You need to join a party. You need to be active, and you need to be having conversations with your friends about how we save this country. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, as we said earlier in this conversation, the Gen Zs look like they're all over it. These kids are hungry for that fight. They want to be involved in this, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
We're going to see more of that emerge as well. So get involved. Look, if you don't like what your school is saying to your kids, get down there and rip into them politely. I mean, do you know how many times I've been down to see the principal at my daughter's high schools over the years? Like, honestly, they got sick of my face. And my wife was as bad, which is worse than me, actually. Right. I'm not going to let you undermine our country. I'm going to say something about it. So you pull them out of that mailing list and you guys don't send them that stuff anymore. Yeah. That's the conversations I had with my school. Yeah. And that's the conversations I had with politicians and local members as well. Yeah. Because it's not good enough. And it needs to be done. It needs to be said. Australians, you're known for your fighting spirit. So dig into your Anzac legacy and come on down.
Amen to that. Well, Scott, I really appreciate you coming in, but I do want to ask you one last question. What do you think is the one thing that we're not talking about that we really ought to be talking about as a nation?
Well, I mean, obviously immigration is a big part of that, but I think we need to talk about how we encourage Australians to have more babies and to love their country. And as I've gotten older, I've started to respect and understand that more. A lot of people say I want to be financially secure before I have children. I mean, I understand that. I waited until I had a house and, I knew I could feed the family before I had kids. But in all honesty, with the benefit of hindsight, I would rather have not been a 33-year-old first-time father. I wish I was 23. I wish that my girls, I'd been done and dusted and I was doing something else at this point now. Look, I love being a dad. It's the best thing I've ever happened. Have babies, have kids, breed, get into it.
Good. Yeah. Can't argue with that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find Scott, I'm going to have all of his links in the description. Shallow Chow on all platforms. And if you want to support him in any way possible at Brisbane, please do give him a follow, give him a share. And guys, absolutely looking forward to the rally this Sunday, 12 p.m. Sydney time. We're going to be streaming everything, and we're going to make sure that we get you the best coverage possible. We're going to try and get some drones in every city to capture the size so the media can't lie with their deceptive, manipulative early helicopters capturing the crowd slowly streaming in. But guys, if you want to support that, please do go follow Scott over on Shallow Chow. And if you want to support the show, we've got a bunch of merch. We did just recently come out with our hats, with our other merch, stuff like the MAGA hats, stuff like the shirts to honor Charlie Kirk. That helps fund our live streaming. That actually helps fund keep the lights on. And we recently launched Turning Point South Australia. They've got an election coming up in 5.5 months. And it's a big one. The Liberals have really dropped the ball down there. I'm really worried about that being a Labor wipeout, much like the WA election. And so we've got a country to save. We've got, in 5.5 months, South Australia, then 6 months after that, Victoria, then 6 months after that, New South Wales. We've got perpetual elections coming up, but we're here to help. So God bless you guys. Please give this a like, share, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao.